Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Vital Signs. This is the Functional Medicine podcast where we talk about all matters functional and integrative medicine. And I've got a very interesting guest with me this evening. His name is Nicholas Alexander. This is somebody that have been working with for many, many years. He's a chartered psychotherapist, and it's very important to bring this into the equation because I work holistically. And I see people with very complex medical problems, but we have to remember there's often a psychological element to that person, their illness, their condition, and it does need some attention. And Nicholas helps me a lot with my patients in helping to really address things holistically by exploring that mind-body connection and seeing how what's going on in somebody's mind is influencing their disease and vice versa. So welcome, Nicholas. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you.
Obviously, many people may not know much about you. Maybe just to give us a little bit of background and about how you got into psychotherapy, because I know you came into it a little bit later on, but just tell us a little about your journey, just to give people a bit of context and background.
Well, it takes a really long time to know who you are in life. I think I have clients that come to me the same stages of life, or the majority of them, as you do. I had a career in musical theatre. I was in the Merchant Navy. I've worked in medicine, business with entrepreneurs, or various fields. I think people come to psychotherapy as a career because you can't be better as a therapist than you are a person in real life. And actually, it's very important, whatever you do, to have a life, to experience different walks of life, emotional, psychological models, the way we have to interact with people. It all tests us. Most people are living lives that are not compatible with their nervous system. Given that the average age for emotional maturity in men has recently been set at 43, we have all this expression, life begins at 40. It probably takes people a really while to come into them leading a life that's compatible with their nervous system, whether that's career-wise or relationship-wise. I don't think I can take my client anywhere I haven't been myself. And at this stage in life, I hope for my body of work that it's part of evident that I've been a lot of places. So I work collaboratively with my patients and clients, and it is the relationship, in my experience, that is the most important and significant activator for change. The most primary significant one being the relationship you have with yourself. People will often say to me, "Oh, I'm starting to feel really relaxed in the session," and I say, "Oh, I'm glad that's happening. Why is that happening?" And what will often come back is, "Oh, I think it's because you're so good at being yourself," and that's really what we ask of people. And the functional medicine side of stuff, the diet and the other stuff, has a hard time sticking if your brain or nervous system is in a state where it's on edge, or you're fighting to keep up something, or you're not living in your natural balance, which is the psychological, emotional, and genetic programming you're born with. And I guess you explore the biological side of it, and I explore the emotional, social, and modifiable lifestyle.
Very interesting. So you mentioned about coming into this later on. You've done many different things before. What do you think of some of the things that have given you the best preparation for what you do, working with patients, in a psychotherapeutic angle?
Being an outsider, I think, having my own set of emotional, psychological, and genetic blips. I know you do testing for that, and really gaining the confidence I feel is in world to gently we are representing ourselves always. This is my operating system. This is how I am. What is your Achilles heel? What we struggle with the morphological, psychological, and genetic makeup we're born with can seem, might not be the same as everyone else's. It might cost us different areas. It can seem like a weakness, but through therapy, you address biological deficiencies. I addressed emotional, temperamental ones. We can change our Achilles heel into our strength. And I think if you're underpowered in certain areas, you have to explore and be resourceful in other areas, which means disobeying with grace. That's a concept I work with. Having naughty little adventures, bumping into other people continues to define who you are. And I've had to do that because on a greater or lesser level, what people get back is an information. I'm different. It's not safe to be me. How do you address that?
Nice. So, I mean, this podcast, the title of this session is all about the mind-body connection, and I kind of have a sense of it from what I do in my world. What does it mean to you, and how do you kind of navigate the mind-body connection in the work that you do with patients?
How do I navigate the mind-body connection? First of all, people are very unfocused sometimes in life with their mind and body. There's a lot of conditions of worth. I've talked about the biological, social, and emotional connection, but there's also what separates every spuling, mewling infant on the planet, and that's the circumstances they were born into. So you've got the nature, and you've got the nurture, the cultural thing. Both those things can have a decimating effect on your life. You know, your psychological and emotion colliding with where you are. Conditions of worth. You are valuable if you have a home of your own, a job, a baby, all these things. What is the cost of being you? People can't help how their life goes. You don't know what you don't know. You know, growing up, if you're not with a loving relationship, certain things are developed. Synapses connect. The brain, the frontal lobe, in terms of identity, and your identity in relation to others doesn't get into adult growth in mid to late 20s. You know, I've said emotional maturity is, for men, recently been said at 43. As you're growing and developing, things get into your track, your original programming. When you're developing, you have experiences, whether it's first erotic experiences, emotional connections. As you've said, this affects how you respond, your nature, your morphology, your brain, your emotions reacting with what's put on you, what's around you, conditions of worth, changes brain chemistry. The brain is the biggest pharmacy. The body speaks its mind. Stress is the biggest cause of inflammation in the body. All things that I know we see between us with our patients. One of them being, big subset we've attracted, is Alzheimer and dementia patients. And that is mind-body, you know, people running programming on circuits that were not designed to run that programming. And that might be emotionally, temperamentally, relationship-wise. You can't have a real relationship with someone else unless you have a real relationship with yourself. What are things that are hard for you to admit to that stick in your throat? And people, you know, your nervous system relaxes when it is with the presence of someone who is authentic and of good intent. And most people are just really trying to get home, but they are very unfocused on what that original programming, where their body should be, related to their mental and sociological capacities, where that actually is. It's an emotional, mental, navigational landmark that affects how your body responds to stress, responding to everything it is to be human and in the world, because we don't know what we don't know. What defines one relationship is another one. There might be 2 or 3 people in a lifetime that really get you, that make you feel at home, that align your nervous system. Some people might not have yet met them yet, or they haven't had a therapist or an enlightened witness that handles whatever happened to them correctly to give them permission to let go of stuff they've been carrying that is not compatible with their nervous system, which puts them in fight or flight mode all the time, you know. They hear critical parent from life, their relationship, their job. How do I get my needs met in a socially acceptable way? It might be causing other people this much stress. Actually, it causes me this much stress. I'm not going to do it. And people are unaware of how much they've been carrying, how much space that takes up, you know. The cortisol, the stress hormone, being inauthentic. This takes up massive stress in the mind, anxiety, which affects the body. Good food, the drugs won't stick if your body is in an unconscious or preconscious state of stress or anxiety that overpowers every other scaffolding you can put upon your physical body.
Interesting. I want to pick up on something you said. You said about the age of emotional maturity was 43. And in my head,
for men, apparently for
men,
women, they say it's 11 years earlier at 32. But I mean, that's
because I had this thing in my mind that, you know, the human brain was fully developed at 25. So what's going on between 25 and 43?
Well, between 25 and 43, 25, the frontal lobe in terms of your identity in relation to others is just getting into adult brain. Might be 25, might be 28. What's going on between those stages is normally late onset adolescence. At 35, very often patients are late onset adolescence. we say it in life, don't we? Life begins at 40. It's written in greeting cards. Life begins at 40. We go through that. And that reflects what I see in my practice. Most people are only really becoming grounded, hemorrhaging all this economic extraneous stuff, becoming simple, grounded, content. I only really see it happening for people around between the ages of 45 to 55. By 42, 47, people are on their second divorce because they're just discovering who they are. That's, the relationship thing. So I would say what's going on between 25 and 40 is ego. The 20s and 30s are full of ego and stress. I want to get this, I want to do this, I want to climb the corporate ladder. That's what's going on. And funnily enough, we have it at the beginning when we come out, because human beings left alone naturally want to achieve their full potential. We are an organism. We are part of nature, And sometimes when you get over to old age, they do recreate that condition again of, information processing, maybe being childlike, maybe from the experience. But in the middle is where people lose it. It takes a really long time to know who you are. It really does.
I know you see a huge range of different kind of patients in your practice, but are you seeing any trends, or are you seeing things evolving since you've been doing psychotherapy, a new kind of range of problems, or is it all boiled down to some of the kind of common themes that you kind of mentioned already?
It was kind of easier and harder for some people because we didn't have as much access to information of the internet. But I think it's always been my opinion that it takes a village to raise a child, and sometimes you don't have options outside of that. The internet, social media, COVID. I said what defines one relationship is another one. When people stopped going out there and they were at peace with themselves and had to find other resources, that created either a natural balance and awareness of what it was to be self-soothed, self-sufficient, or it aggravated external locus of evaluation through social media, through people looking at themselves on Zoom. And actually what's happened is people have suddenly got a lower toleration threshold in the world now, because they don't have internal locus of evaluation. It is a lot more performative, which has led to identity crises, social media being banned for young people. In Australia, they started to think about not having that under 18 or sometimes under 25 for young people. And mental health has been a huge explosion because there's been an awareness in conscious from COVID and from social media about what am I doing, who am I, where am I, what do I want, how am I going to get it? And this connection that we've got that is supposed to make life easier for people fills up, actually gives people less space in their brain and mind to find their identity. So people are sicker than they were mentally, but there's also an awareness because of the internet that there is a possibility to change or do something about it because you're connected to other communities and subgroups. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We are certainly not in the space we were. People are making much more allowances. So it's just more crowded. It's a lot more noisy in terms of what you can be, what you expect it to be in the world. Identity, most of it is related to identity. And there's more choice, there's more connection, but there's more disassociation because there's more conditions and worth and opinions over what people are. So people latch onto things. There's a greater potential to latch onto things, but there's a greater potential to latch onto the wrong things, which lead them further away from being alone with themselves. And remember what COVID did, isolated people. And I think Vincent van Gogh says all man's problems stem from his inability to be in a room and do nothing, and the world shall yield itself to you. People don't know how to do that anymore. They're just plugged in.
Interesting. Now, obviously, I have a big interest in COVID, and I've seen a lot of patients with long COVID, and I'm still dealing with them 3-4 years down the line. I mean, have we kind of dealt with COVID psychologically, or is there still this aftermath of that kind of whole period of lockdown and all the psychological trauma and everything that it brought to people? Or are you seeing it starting to recover?
Well,
or is it,
no, it's funny. It's funny because in every session I have, even now, just this week, people will normally bring up, and whether it's a significant life event or a divorce or something, they will always say, and during COVID, either this changed the path of my career or a bomb went off in the relationship, or they just got used to something that they never tasted it. For some people, it was very healing. It gave people an opportunity to go, hang on, I've now connected to this. I can't unsee what I've unseen. This relationship with myself has now defined different pathways, ways of being. I can't go back to how I was. So it's created a crisis. It's a bit like when people go on holiday or have Christmas, suddenly they're alone with themselves. And that's when you get a higher divorce rate or change rate or something else, because we are just so busy surviving. We don't get the opportunity to explore new networks, emotional, social connections that make us thrive. And once people have in another way, it's very hard to go back to what they were doing. The biggest activator actually for longevity, health and well-being is the quality and amount of our social and emotional connections above diet and exercise. And the biggest connection, primary, most significant relationship being the one you have with yourself. And every other relationship is a reflection of that. So I think, again, like I said about social media, it gave people connections and disconnections and just magnified polarizing responses to COVID. Some of it was very good, which made them reject other areas of their life. Some of it was very bad. Either way, it put people in touch with themselves on a major level that they hadn't been in touch with themselves before. And obviously, as it takes such a long time to know ourselves and the world hasn't quite realigned, this is, I'm not even going to say it's beyond years. I say it might go into decade length in terms of processing that information. It's like a rebirth, if you like. You start again, you start learning, I'm connecting to myself. Because all from the beginning, most people end up self-medicating, or either through the relationship pattern, style or habit, or a lifestyle choice or something. But when they started doing that, part of them stopped growing, is still there when that trauma started. And COVID was a big trauma. So part of them is still left there or opened up, starting again.
Interesting. You've mentioned social media a couple of times. You've talked about it being banned in certain countries, but I'm really interested in what you think social media
for young people. We realize the effect of on young people is mental health. Suicide being the biggest killer of men between 18 and 60, not heart disease, not lung cancer, but it's
So I'm really interested in what you think the role of social media and digital overload is doing to the psyche of the world, in your experience, from the people you've seen and your patients' experiences and interactions with social media. Where do you see social media at the moment? It's got a lot of talk, and it's always in the news about something either being banned or there's something going out there which is undesirable. How do you see it as being a healthy or unhealthy influence on the psyche?
Well, it's a distraction from something you should be looking at, or it's either replacement for something that should be there that's not there. I mean, at a very fundamental level, we're dealing with the whole in the soul. And, if you're in a bad place, the thing is, you're inviting it into your living room, aren't you? You can sit on your bed and open up social media. And it's like opening the door it's like opening your door on the street to a stranger. Anything can walk in. And if people are vulnerable, people can fall down all sorts of holes. A lot of it, a lot of people have a lot of screen time. They go to porn addiction, spending screen time. A lot of people come to that. It's or approval, or the chemicals you get released when a lot of people like you on Facebook. This is a shop window. And it's also an opportunity to be preyed upon when they do want to put their messiness, show private faces in public, when they want to put all the rubbish out the back, out the front. It can also collude. It can, you can then get things that are mutual collusion and delusion. If you've got something off with you and you're not taking it to therapy, because a lot of people won't, a lot of men won't, they will keep their defense mechanisms that will serve them very well until they die, go on the internet, they'll file something to support it, like these, killings, cults, political situation. We know with governments around the world what Twitter has done in terms of power, the major currencies we have in life, money, power. And then another currency is the emotional and empathic connection, the connections you make with people by being empathic. That's also a currency. But what's happening is empathy is going out the way, and you're finding people to collude with a delusion or a dysfunction that normalizes it. And now we've got this at the highest level of governmental strategic, intercontinental control. Sometimes employment can be about bullying and humiliation because someone is dependent on it. And if you let your inner self out at a time when you can go on the computer and talk to people, that's a currency that people who are narcissistic, people who are controlling, can take that emotional empathy currency, turn it and either use it against you or create a group or an organization whereby you've created another altered reality, let alone having to deal with the altered reality that you grew up with your parents. Young people come on the phone, we need our parents most in our 20s. Oh, their parents can't help them because they're in their 40s or 50s. They're on like 42, 47 on their second divorce, knowing who they are. So they go on the internet. So you're even further from home. If you don't grow up in a loving household, you don't see a loving relationship, you don't see it, how that is normal, you can't be it. And then you come in to be something else, and then you find something else to be. Everyone is just trying to get home, and the internet, social media kind of distorts that or creates a false sense of security or a false sense of power. Like, why does someone need to be in power? Look at our politicians, high visible politicians. Everyone is trying to be somebody for somebody else. That's the key. That's what I think media and social media does. It takes you further away from your nervous system, from health, from a sense of freedom, comfort, joy, and support, because it gives a greater external locus of evaluation. And my work is all about internal locus of evaluation. What do you feel? What do you think? What do you know? How do you feel secure? How can you say, actually, no, I'm not doing that anymore? Disobey with grace. Naughty little adventures. Everyone is trying to get home.
Nice. Going back to the kind of mind-body connection thing. So you've been working with functional medicine practitioners for a while. Can you kind of think of any particular examples where, your approach has really helped somebody restore that mind-body connection and really got headway and improvements in their health because you were able to tackle that mind-body connection, that missing piece of the puzzle that perhaps people working physically had perhaps missed? Any particular things that come to mind with the work that you've done?
Yeah, I think it's been really important, when you start off with a practice, or whether it's surgery, plastic surgery, functional medicine, whatever it is, you don't necessarily choose what set of patients or demographics come to you at a certain time. It sort of comes about through the process. And I know between us, one of a particular subset of patients has been dementia and Alzheimer's patients. And you said about things have come together that have really released stuff. At that point, what I found is there's been a real stock taking in the process. Like, there's something bugging them. They don't know what it is. And, the end stage of dementia usually ends up an accelerated process of approaching end of life. You've worked biologically with the biological building blocks on, cellular, biomechanical level, I guess. And I've had a lot of, some like lawyers, people that have been in very verbally combative, confrontational situations, and from any field of life, actually, but particularly where people have had to live quite a combative, defensive life. And there's something not quite right where they can't get the hang on, they can't communicate with, problems with their relationship, the partner's suddenly alone, losing someone. The partners often come on as well. The fact it involves the whole family, dementia care in psychotherapy. But for the person with the disease, with the degeneration, they want to do a stock take quite urgently. It's like what is bothering them, they can't put their finger on. So the opportunity to revisit, clear up memories while they still have it suddenly becomes urgent. Because at that point, it's like almost too late to do anything about it. And you suddenly get a realization, Clearing that by creating a greater redundancy, either through your work in functional medicine and me with giving them a clarity in their stock taking, has allowed them, I know your question was, how do they change their life? But it's enabled them, which has been, I found very effective, to die peaceably, to sort out something, to clear whatever it was. And it's a bit like because suddenly you become unguarded. Suddenly all the closets and rooms of the mind there isn't that self-censorship or containment anymore, because there isn't the integrity, either structural integrity or emotional integrity, and it kind of all spills out, and people don't know what to do with it, and they're in pain, you know. And because there's the unguardedness, clearing that up in psychotherapy, I feel allows people, or we've seen with the families, has allowed a last minute 11th hour stop date to come to peace with things, to die at peace. And I think that has been the most life-changing thing that I've seen in terms of their specific peace of mind, because all we want is the truth. There's peace of mind in that. It can't be any greater or less than it is. It is what it is. And they've been able to find a peace of mind or truth that either was a contributory factor leading up to the dementia. Obviously, there's genetic things at play. And to be able to sort out things with their family so that they die peacefully by letting go. And that really has been a life-improving quality for the very precious last sections of life. You know, people that die in purgatory are people, when they get there, they realize what they've done. It's too late to do anything about it. You know, if you've done everything, you've sorted up in that closing end chapter, you followed your heart, you did what you need to do, you don't let go. If you died tomorrow, you would be at peace. You did what you need to do, you followed your heart. And that, for me, that has been the most life-changing experience, of my experience with functional medicine and psychotherapy, not only for the individual involved, but for their family, because you know, that is identity, a loss of identity, but you really realize how much it affects everyone else. And normally you don't know when you're going to die, but in that point, it's given us the opportunity to clean up and provide clarity to die well.
Yeah, not enough is said about quality of death, but you make a really, really important point. What about working with functional medicine practitioners? Because obviously the approach is probably very different. You're working on a particular dimension, they're working on a dimension. Do you have any particular challenges with working with medical establishment?
People?
Yeah. And how do you overcome them?
With functional medical establishment? Well, I don't know. I think the reason we got together is because conventional medicine sometimes is like, what does it do? It treats illness. It treats, you've already fallen down. You already haven't been getting what you needed. And it gives you crutches, but it doesn't prepare the body or the legs. Because like, if you keep on doing what you've done, you keep on getting what you've always got. People prescribe sleeping pills. Okay, you sleep for 2 nights, 2 weeks, you know. By treating the symptom, it's not really addressing why you're not sleeping. I deal with the felt sense and empowering people. You know, if people's thoughts are in the right place, they don't want to put junk in their mouth. If they're not stressed, they don't want to reach for food to get those chemicals. Life is stressing them. So it influences how they go to the relationships to get the chemicals they need, or how they go to food, or how they go to their job for identity, that awareness. My relationship with conventional medicine, what you're talking about, is, yes, that is too late. You know, what I liked when meeting you was, you know, you're testing for genetic genetic markers that are potentially going to be vulnerabilities. In the same way, I draw attention to emotional, psychological makeup that we're born with. You know, we don't fundamentally change. And how do you have the right motivation and satiation to regard your felt sense to provide the balance where you don't end up getting sick because you're in control of it? Anyone's medical degree, you told me this, whereas there's no such thing as medical fact, only medical opinion. Anyone's medical degree is valid in treating stuff, but also what's equally valid is it doesn't make up for the 20, 30 years experience you have of being you in your body with your psychological and genetic makeup and what your body knows, you know. And it's to create that awareness through functional medicine and psychology and emotions and role identity, being in your column of operation, which is the strongest place you can be, through leaving lanterns to illuminate the night landscape. You look at biological markers. The two are inextricably linked. The emotion, the awareness, how the pressure people put on themselves drives morphology. Your morphology drives, your mental and the sociological connections. An awareness of these things that we do between us brings us a power of health, an autonomy, where if we stick in our column, we can operate at the limits, we can go outside of it, but that's the strongest place we can be. Then we take responsibility for our own health. Conventional medicine is an A&E situation for the car crash often of society and an unawareness of the mind-body connection. And we are creating awareness of that and giving it back to the patient. As I said, the biggest activator for longevity and health, the amount of quality, emotional, social connections you have in your life, your primary one being for yourself. That's a body awareness level or an emotional one.
Fascinating. I don't know if you've seen this in your practice. I'm certainly seeing a lot of it. So anxiety and overwhelm seem to be on the rise, and I'm seeing it kind of physical manifestations of it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing you're seeing the sort of the effects on the psyche. But what can people do to help themselves? I want to see if we can get some kind of little helpful tips for people out there who are watching, who may be in this sort of space and want to do some self-help. Is there anything that you suggest, recommend, do with your patients that's very effective from anxiety and overwhelm in this very kind of anxiety-provoking world that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, again, this comes back to that thing about, I always come back to the felt sense and people being in external locus of evaluation, coulda, woulda, shoulda, conditions of worth. I come back to this organism thing about, it's the quality of the connections we have, not the amount of them. And you have to be very aware of what you're letting into yourself, like, in relationships. Because it is like opening a door to a street and you're letting all these things sit in with you, Emotion overrides logic. Logic seems the logical thing to do, but sometimes if you haven't got the emotional, the confidence or the well-being or redundancy, you can't carry through the logical thing, that job, that opportunity. This is what overwhelms people, It's not worth doing, it's too stressful. And I know what you work with is, I'm all talking around the felt sense there. You talk about the gut as well, which I believe, the gut is the second brain, 75% of immunity is in the gut. So in terms of helping people with overload, and everyone has a different key. It's really people's own compass, like their own emotional navigational landmarks, as to go where the heals are, the healing places, the healing people, grounding exercises, geographic. If you can't get out of your mind or your body, you're overwhelmed, physically move. Opening up geographical landscapes can open up emotional ones. Opening up broadening your social and emotional horizons can open up other pathways and way to cope with the overwhelm. It's not that the stress gets any smaller or the pain or whatever the overwhelm is floating, it can obliterate you. It's just that you grow bigger around it so that it seems smaller. So, sometimes the best way to help yourself is to help other people. But overwhelm, stress comes from a narrowing down of your processes and saying, I'm not good enough, I can't, I'm supposed to be doing that. We get into this tunneled vision separation. Whatever you can do, naughty little adventures, I'm always a proponent of that. That might be just staying on the train one stop longer and going for a walk. Disobeying with grace, we explore that to a huge extent, and that means different things to different people. These might sound hokey concepts, but you really have to reclaim space. If all the doors are shut, how can you open the windows? And sometimes you just do things better from having a complete break from something, from doing nothing. The more you concentrate something, people try to grip onto stuff in their life, and it can't be. You can hold it, but you have to hold it gently. And if you're not happy, you won't have a career anyway. You cannot be better in your role than you are a person in real life. It's all about seeing the world in terms of energy. If you've got stuff coming out in different areas, you are looking around to plug into. What is it that you are plugging into consciously? Okay. Therapy. Go to therapy and get permission. Try and make the unconscious conscious. And like you can choose to have a diet from negative food. If you go to a buffet, I'm not going to have that food. You can have a diet from negative thoughts. And you can go to places where you're expanded, so your nervous system relaxes, either a distraction from something that you need to be looking at or to replace something that's not there. But you might be wrong. You might get things wrong, but you'll never not be truthful. You've got to own your emotions. I am humiliated. I am feeling, you've got to really be aware of that, not suppress, because anything you suppress pops up at the worst time at the least convenient space. And you might make mistakes, but your intention will never not be good. So if you're connecting to yourself on that level, in an overwhelming, it means you can connect to others in that way, which means you'll always be okay, because you've got to keep this quality of connection. Overwhelm is disconnection from things you naturally need. Widen your empathic envelope. I am humiliated, I'm angry, and now this is coming into the room. I'm wondering what's going on for you. Dialogue with whatever's overwhelming you, as a personal place or job. Dialogue keeps things safe. And, be honest, we've all got things. All have uglies. Easier if you're overwhelmed to bring them into the room than to suppress them and ignore them. Sit down with the monster behind the wardrobe. Anything that you actually see and address is going to be less frightening than that, which you just keep trying to wait and you don't see and you're not looking at it. So if you're overwhelmed, work with your senses. See, taste, touch, mind, Where can you go to put yourself? Is it a sauna, spa, massage, connection, bath with your lover, with a friend? Time spent in company is therapeutic. Get out of whatever you're in, physically, psychologically, and emotionally. Be honest. Put what's on the inside out.
Good
And
advice.
say, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing it anymore.
What do you think about nature and spending time outdoors in terms of, helping mental health?
Well, I just had this in my last session that someone said about nature. I said, the thing is, life's very performative. Like, the reason people are calming in nature and it's grounded is because it's completely non-performative. People are just being, dogs and children are very immediate. You're in nature. It gives you a sense. Again, this is a chemical that comes from purpose. Well, I'd expand that. One of the chemicals you need is a sense of being a part of something that's larger than you, that's growing. Nature is the ultimate thing of that. It gives you a sense. Camping, something I love to do. I'm always going off to a corner of the field because it's this being, it directly accesses your pathways into being a human being, not a human doing, because that's how the natural world is. A tree doesn't think, I'm going to grow my branch in this area and then I'm going to do this. You just give it the right ingredients of space, light, soil, things just happen. It's like, you were never meant to be like this, overwhelmed and stressed, not who you really are. Given the right conditions, human beings naturally want to achieve their full potential. So, physiologically, biologically, nature is a model for following your blueprint, your original genetic coding. You link to it. Again, that thing, it's like standing in the sun. You know when you're in it, you know when you're not. Most people do know if they go for a walk along the beach, they have negative ions. They have a transference of power from the ocean, from the light, the sunlight. Winter's terrible for everyone because they're going in, they're not being out. But also it's a time when you are constrained to heal, to sleep, to recuperate, to hibernate, closes things down. Nature, there's an ending. When sun goes down, that's it. You said yourself, we are completely messed up because of the invention of what was it you said, Andrew?
The light bulb.
The light bulb.
Yeah.
Because we are organisms. We're organisms.
Because we were designed to be asleep when it's dark and up when it's light, and the light bulb changed everything.
That's the thing.
Yeah. So what do you think the future of mental health looks like as we become better at integrating, functional medicine, physical stuff with psychological approaches? Where do you think we're going? What does it look like for you?
Unfortunately, we live in a world that's really, really connected. Social media's changed politics, it's changed world order, it's changed how we exist. So mental health has got worse. It's worse than it was. The food's got worse since the 40s. All the nutrients have been sucked out of the soil. We're getting bigger populace. We're getting more and more intense. We're getting more and more connected in toxic groupthink, collective unconsciousness. Mental health's been a massive growth industry. People have since when did I start training? Well, probably since about 2014. We're in a worse position now than we were 10 years ago. What do you see at the world? That being a macrocosm of the microcosm that we live in, like our tiny, massive stories. The more people plug into this, I see mental health getting potential to get much worse. But it's also, we talk about conditions, it's like an evolutionary process. There are newer and older countries in the world, People are going through this evolutionary process. And we're not very evolved, are we? We've got worse. We look at the world now, it's worse. People having to work harder, there's more threat, economic, this greater load of connection, emails that are supposed to free us up and give us more time, they actually rob time from us. And it's getting more and more mobile. And AI, this generation, the young people that I'm coming up, their challenge is going to be AI. Because they need to decipher what is real, what is a human connection. Getting further away from how can they decipher that? So we're getting more and more lost. I mean, I don't want to be negative, but it's a reflection of the lack of mental health. And school is all on the wrong curriculum at school. You're not taught about economic well-being. Who are you really? So that you don't get into narcissistic relationships. We've all been in rubbish relationships because we were in no situational job or that awful situation because we didn't know who we were. You're not taught about what are you, what's your core, what's your relating patterns, because you spend more time with your job than you do with your lover, mother, brother, sister, and everyone else. I think there is on the optimistic side, now I've done the negative, there is an increasing awareness of mental health. So hopefully that can be brought in to counteract all the bad things, because sometimes it takes something really nasty to happen for people to sit up and take notice. And I think that's what will happen in mental health and the world at large.
Thank you. As we're coming to the end and want to end on a kind of a positive note, if you have any sort of maybe your top 3 tips for mental health self-care that either maybe you do or that you ask your patients to do as part of their kind of homework, or just to kind of really. Yeah.
Okay, I'll say it in the 3 lines. I've talked a lot that's sort of summed on the things, but I would say have a naughty little adventure, something's just for you that works on your senses. Disobey with grace. So I'm not doing that for someone, what you're going to do. And sometimes the best way to hear help is to help other people. We're all in this together. That, as I've said, the most important social and emotional part that gives you health, freedom, comfort, joy, and support is your quality of connection to others. Go for a walk. Go and have a conversation with that old person in the village in the middle of France, because somewhere out there's an animal, a child, a place, a person, a square, a situation, somewhere where you're going to be seen and heard, somewhere that's waiting to have a conversation with you. And to be seen and heard is just very, very therapeutic in itself.
Wonderful. What a great note to end on. Nicholas, thank you so much for your time on this podcast. For anybody that will be like to reach out, get in touch, perhaps would like to have a consultation with you, how can people get hold of you?
You can Google Nicholas Alexander Psychotherapy Harley Street. You can email me, WhatsApp me. There's contact details, email, and contacts on the website. Someone will have a conversation with you, or any therapist you go to. It doesn't have to be me. I would say try a number of therapists. I went through 7 when I was training because I didn't feel seen and heard that this was doing for me. And, is that thing that felt sense? You'll get different people from different sources. Allow yourself to go wherever you need to do to get your closure. But I'm always happy to hear from anyone, either to see myself or signpost them to someone else that I think might be able to help them better than I can.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we'll put your bio up on the podcast information. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I hope I get to work with you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.